All right, hi everybody. I am joined at Devoxx UK. We're at Devoxx UK. My friend Daniel Garnier Moiroux. How are you doing, my friend?
Very good, very well. You?
Yeah, good. You know, the last time we were at Devoxx together was probably in Belgium, but before that was Devoxx France, I think.
Yes.
Where we spoke about passkeys.
Yes, passkeys.
And obviously, I was just and still very much am an interloper in that domain. I'm not really. It's not my forte, But it's very interesting because you know a lot about that stuff because you work a lot on the security side of things.
Right.
What do you do on the big old Spring team?
Well, as you said, Spring Security, your favorite Spring library that doesn't scare you to death. That's us. Yep.
Yeah. Spring Security is one of those things where if you know what you're doing, it is the most powerful thing ever. And if you don't know what you're doing, and you just want the defaults, and they are very good defaults, you're also in a good place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like most people, like when they're in an enterprise scenario, they kind of want more than the defaults.
I think it's fine. Everything is fine in the security world until you get into SAML.
Right?
And that's when the conversation starts to get icky. That's not Spring Security's fault. That's just SAML. Okay. I mean, there's a difference there.
No, but study your Spring Security.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have a video about this, or quite a few. Find me by my name. There's like 3 concepts you need to know to be able to extend it, and you won't be scared anymore.
Which are?
So filters.
Yeah.
If you're doing the serverless, like filters, authentications, and then authentication providers. And with that, you're golden.
I like that. I'm a big fan. I mean, so the security stuff, it is fundamentally just a filter. I mean, you think about what it is. Yes. It's in the servlet API from the distant past. I don't even know how many people appreciate that there is a servlet API underneath Spring anymore, but it is still there, right? It still does its job just fine. Tomcat being awesome all the time. There's this concept of a filter. It just sits there intercepting requests that come into the web stack. And turns out that's a surprisingly good place to ask questions like, hey, who's making this request? Do they have proof? And what permissions do they have once they get into the system? And so it all just flows from that very simple concept. And indeed, all the architecture of Spring Security is all about what? It's just putting that authenticated user, they've got some proof of who they are. We've used that to then establish who they are. We store that in a thread local so that it's visible in all the different filters and all the different layers of the filter.
Yep, exactly.
And in the code. That's it. That's the entire Spring Security framework. You could write that yourself. The difference is getting the algorithms, getting the different kinds of integrations for different kinds of proofs, getting all that stuff right. And that's what takes 20 years,
Exactly, right? Well, the building blocks for knowing where to look in Spring Security, easy. But then the security stuff is like reading tens, hundreds of pages of specs and discussions and
it's not for the faint of heart, and that's why security itself is complex. Spring Security, not so much. Right? I had a really good conversation here with somebody. We're at Devoxx UK again. Very good show in the Java space. I think one of my favorites, right? Devoxx UK. There you go. And I had a good conversation with somebody who likes Spring Boot, but their favorite project is Spring Integration. Which I love too. So we got on that was Ludo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yesterday.
Oh, that's why you spent some time chatting with him.
Yes.
I was like, do they know each other?
No, I just met him, but it turns out he's a CTO for a really big company, and they are using Spring Integration at scale. And I'm like, I want to talk to you. You're doing things that are really interesting. And what he said, and the thing that I've always thought was true, was if you know the patterns, and the code comes alive. Yes. And the same thing for Spring Security.
Yes, absolutely.
I have to. We're at this conference, and we're in the open expo floor area, and people are trying to steal our coffee. They're trying to take these empty. They think this is an empty cup. This is why I come to these conferences. By the way, is there's free coffee.
Oh yes.
Right? I could have stayed home. I could have. This is just
same conference coffee.
Right. Yeah.
It's best in the world.
Think of this as a 12-hour expedition to the cafe. No. So anyway, the patterns come alive.
Yes.
The code comes alive if you understand the patterns, and I think that if you come at Spring Security from the patterns,
yes,
from the protocols, from the don't look at the curly brackets. Look at the ideas first, and then Spring Security just leaps out of the page. Right.
It's extremely consistent.
Super good, and I love that. I mean, where it really starts to fall into place is now that we've got the GA Spring Security 6.4 or whatever it was last year. Now you can do dot one-time token, dot form login, dot HTTP basic, dot passkey, WebAuthn, right?
WebAuthn, yeah.
And then and that's all built into the core Spring Security module.
Yes.
And if that isn't enough, then just do .with and then plug it into an extension DSL like the authorization server.
Exactly.
It's just HTTP security, and then you dot, and the thing just, it's done. You've got an auth server. You've got a passkeys implementation. So good. So yeah, so you're talking about security here.
So yeah, we're doing passkeys. So we did a talk together, but last time we discussed it was a snapshot.
Oh,
and now it's live. It's the real thing. It's fully implemented. We had our first bugs that we fixed. So look forward for 6.5. We have JDBC support because you want to save this, right? In memory is cute, but
it's adorable.
Yeah, you kind of, it's not real. Rob, our friend Rob Winch, the lead of Spring Security, says it's not real until there's a JDBC implementation.
It's true.
So 6.5 in 2 weeks now, coming up. And
GA.
Yeah, GA.
Well, you know why? Because Spring Boot 3.5 comes out just a few weeks after that, right? And before,
in 2 weeks, I think, right?
Yeah, like May 20th or whatever. Yeah,
yes.
May 22nd. Yes. That's right. You know how you can tell, by the way? I'm guessing. I kind of remember the dates. Calendar.spring.io. Mm-hmm. Turns out these calendars are going to be useful.
Exactly. So so we're going to be showing it a little bit less passkey centric, a little bit more implementation focused. I also take a detour through the one-time token login you mentioned, right?
Right.
It's like, you can do passwordless login. We've been able to do that for decades, right? Don't need the fancy passkey crypto blah 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 stuff. Right. Just send a token through email, and now it's supported as a first-class thing.
It is so elegant too. Like, I really think we should reach out to our friends over at Twilio and SendGrid and do a joint demo, because I think what you're doing is you're sending an out-of-band token, right?
Exactly.
Well, where are you going to send that? Via text message?
Yes.
An email.
Yeah.
And WhatsApp and whatever. Is there a single company that does all these kind of out-of-band chat apps, Yeah,
I think Twilio is probably a good place to look for. But maybe the problem is that it's not a great demo because it's too short. It just works, right? It takes 5 minutes and boom, it's built.
I certainly couldn't hang an hour-long talk off of that demo. No, it would be... and that was our friend in Brazil who wrote that code, right?
Marcus. Yes, Marcus.
Correggio. Yeah, amazing code, right? It's so elegant. It's just one-time token, and you put a success handler. And then it's done. You get a callback, and you get a pointer to the token, and you can put it in the string of the body of an email, or send it via text message or whatever. Mm-hmm. They click on that link, and it just logs in. Super good. So that's all very good. And the security stuff, we've talked about this before. I could talk about it forever. And actually, one of the things I'm kind of keen to hear your opinion on is, while I have you, what about the MCP stuff? Anything you want to talk about there?
Yeah, we're working on that, right? So Spring AI, big project, lots of momentum.
It's going to be big. That's May 20th.
Yes.
2 days before Spring Boot 3.5.
Yes. So finally GA.
Hallelujah.
It keeps changing, right?
Just
you go to bed and you come back, and then there's a new model with a different API, and so we're doing MCP. So MCP, the for those who don't know, the ability to plug tools that your LLMs can use.
Yeah.
And so, for example, they can access knowledge that is current, right? Get the current weather, the current stock price for today, right? It's not baked into their model. So an API, but instead of being for another computer, it's an API for an LLM.
Right.
And so that started, the nice folks at Anthropic started that project.
Yeah.
And the first thing they did was just run a process on your machine.
Right.
But then that doesn't really scale, right? If you're an enterprise, you want to serve that data to your customers or to your internal customers, you probably have some sort of service that serves traffic over incredible things like HTTP or...
Right. Imagine the foundation of the web. We should use that, no? Maybe?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so that was the next step, right?
I mean, to their credit, they did build that into the spec.
Yes.
But then came...
Someone said, hey, you can't just have open endpoints about everything here.
It can't just be wide open, right?
You can. Does that mean you should? Probably not.
This isn't PHP, okay? No, this is so the spec was standard in, standard out, like you said.
Yeah.
And that's on the same host as your Claude desktop.
Yes.
So fine. Authentication is not as big a deal because by the time somebody's got access to your machine,
Yes, running
you're hosed
processes.
you're already hosed anyway. That's not a real threat problem, threat vector. But over HTTP, that's got to be secured. So you and I looked at that early draft
Yes.
of the MCP spec, and I was gobsmacked by how poorly. Maybe it's just a question of
Great one.
hello, my friend. We should have a conversation soon. We're on a live stream.
Say hi. Say hi.
Come here. Come say hi. Victor Rente, hi.
Legend of testing.
Well, do you have time in like 20 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, let's come back and we'll do a presentation, do a podcast. So anyway,
MCP spec.
MCP, yeah. So we did this. We looked at the spec, and I think, look, I read it 3 different ways, and it looked like they were telling me every single MCP service needed to also be an auth server.
Yes, an auth server, so meaning it issues its own JWT
and
tokens.
validates
Yes.
those same tokens, which is that felt a little like, look, I read the spec and I kept on thinking,
That's too much.
we could do that.
Right.
We just talked about it a minute ago. We talked about hi, we're on a live stream. How you doing?
Fine, just concentrating.
Okay. Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
So yes, you could build this with Spring and Spring Security, right? We did it.
We did. So one-liner to build an auth server
Yes.
with Spring Security, but that's an exception, right? When I say an auth server, we're talking about things like Active Directory.
Yes.
That's an auth server, right? Most people don't just
Microsoft Entra ID now.
Microsoft Intra ID. That's an auth server. That's a valid, fully compliant OAuth IDP, right? Keycloak, which is a downloadable tarball or whatever. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Again, this is not something you just stand up for every little service. It would be very redundant, right? And so for Spring, we have the Spring authorization server. It's just a Spring Boot starter.
Right.
So I guess, if anybody could have complied with that very onerous specification, it would have been us. But why?
Yes.
Right? So what did you, okay, so you read it, and that you're the only one that gave me the good news. What are you thinking?
So
I did say that, right?
Yeah. Well, the entire community, I think, recognized the effort of doing something, for security.
Right.
Following standards, like not inventing their own protocol for securing. That's good. But that maybe having every MCP server be an authorization server was not a great idea. So they had quite a few comments on the spec. And we're now there's a draft of a new version coming up, and the MCP servers will now only be validating tokens. So in OAuth parlance, there will be resource servers, not authorization servers.
Right. So let's talk about that. What is it? So stepping back a little bit, again, it's about the protocols. Once you understand the protocols, the code becomes simpler. What are the main characters in an OAuth?
So the main entities in OAuth, there are 4 of them. So we mentioned the authorization server. It's the server that authenticates users and issues tokens, creates tokens, signs them, so on.
After they've authenticated.
Right, after the user.
So that would be Keycloak or Okta or whatever.
Exactly, or Spring authorization server that you use to build something. So somewhere in there, there's the user, meat bag, right? Physical world.
Yeah.
And so this is the resource owner.
Yeah.
So it's Daniel, I own my photos on Google Photos.
Right.
Then there's the resource server, is where those photos are stored, for example.
Right,
and
the
so,
API.
Exactly, it's the API, and it receives requests, and those requests must have a token that represent me, my permissions.
Right.
And then the 4th entity is the one you care about as a developer, is the client. It's the app you develop. So myphotobook.example.com that will request photos on my behalf to Google Photos. So I can give a token to myphotobook.example.com. It will use that token to grab my photos, and they won't have access to my Gmail address or like Gmail inbox or calendar. And it's scoped to certain albums, and it's like, it's time bound, so it's only valid for a day, and so on. So that's what you do with OAuth, yeah.
Right. So a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
The resource server part should be the lightest part.
Yes.
Because it's just a filter that says,
yes,
there's a token, yes, come on through, no, rejected, right?
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the MCP stuff should be, right?
Yes. And this is what we're aiming at.
Okay.
And they've been working with like great folks in security and at Microsoft and in the community in general, to even adopt the latest OAuth standards to make discoverability better, to have less stuff to configure up front, so that your client application can just like connect, create identify itself with the author and like bootstrap the
Right.
connection.
So what happens to can you speak to some of the like what happens? How do roles work when you have 1,000 different MCP services that don't know about each other?
So the OAuth has
scopes.
OAuth has no idea of what a role is, right? It's not a construct that's in the spec. What we have is scopes, right? And it's just a string that represents your authorization. So like, albums.read or like photo.1234.delete, right? And so you're allowed to delete that photo, and that's it. And so when you do single sign-on with, say, I don't know, Microsoft, for example, you get these big pop-ups that tell you all the information that the third party will get access to. Right. So you should read those. Those are security sensitive, and you're security sensitive professionals, aren't we? Right?
Yeah.
So you read those and you decide what you can allow. So there's nothing in OAuth about this. There's nothing in the MCP spec about like fine-grained authorization. That's left as a it's a business decision, right? What does my MCP server care what my role is?
Right.
Well, that's for me to decide. That's my business need.
But there's no uniform set of scopes either. Like, I mean, there's some Open OID Connect or
right? Open ID Connect, but that's it, right? There's very few scopes that are standard.
So there's not even like a concept of like administrator versus reader versus so you can't even really communicate. Also, how would that work? Would Cloud Desktop like pop up?
Yeah. So that's so.
How do they communicate that?
So in the original specs they did, you really felt like it was geared toward Cloud Desktop. The use case, like a human, boots up an application, they're present, and they click to add stuff. So maybe run a process on their machine or connect to some service. Now we're getting into these cloud environments where the client application is not on my desktop. It's a website that I connect to. Right.
It's the OAuth client.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so we're now exploring a little bit more. What does that even mean in terms of authorization? Because these MCP servers, they offer prompts, resources, tools, and you can list the tools.
Right.
Like, what
should they have access to?
Right, exactly. So should they have access to all the tools? Should the authorization be performed only when you're trying to change the state, so like calling the tool or trying to access privileged information? All of this is still being worked out. And so we're in that state where we're implementing it, we're playing with the spec, and providing feedback because we're discovering the limits of what the flows can be, what the needs of the users are.
It's an impedance mismatch, right? OAuth and MCP are two separate specs that were developed for completely different domains.
Yes.
Now they're being married together, and I think it'll be successful. But it's very good to have. I mean, I think Anthropic have been very receptive.
Extremely, and
advice.
And they're moving really fast, like taking that feedback. So which is great. Because otherwise we would have been stuck with like a spec that is not a good fit for everyone.
No, less than a month of people were like crying about it, and it got changed, and they're improving it already.
On the implementer side, on our side, it's a little bit less comfortable because you're collaborating with the team. So the Spring AI team, the Spring security team, it's changing like links to the spec and saying like, read this, and then the person was on PTO and then come back 3 days later and like,
spec has changed.
Yeah, it's like I can't read. Like, what do you mean? It doesn't say that. It said that last week. So that's changed now. So
it's a good problem to have, though.
Yes.
And by the way, for people who are out there in the AI space, this is obviously a very interesting moment in time.
Yes.
I haven't felt this excited to be a part of a, I don't know, what's a non-marketing term for a big thing, a seismic shift,
but a revolution.
I mean, it is really exciting out there, but in order for it to be real, it needs to be secure, it needs to be production worthy, scalable, like Spring Boot will give you most of that. It'll give you the GraalVM native images, virtual threads, observability, actuator, and,
now security.
So, and then, of course, that's all pulled in by Spring AI. That's what makes Spring AI your one-stop shop for AI. So I'm really excited about that. Obviously, not done, but we'll talk again.
Yes.
Probably soon.
Yes. We're trying to, we know that our community wants this.
Right.
So we want something out, even if it's, if we do something next week, it won't be in the release, right? But we'll give you a sample.
Right.
So how can you configure this to
like a white paper, maybe?
Yeah, just an example thing, like a blog post, and it says like, hey, you want to use these new use cases? Well, you can implement it because everything in Spring is extensible. Spring Boot then gives you the nice defaults.
Right.
But we'll explain to you how you can, well, use the extensibility now to build these secure use cases.
Right. I love it. Okay. So one of the reasons I love Spring is that it gives me the ability to, in the AI space as well, we have to, as good as AI is, you should still test it, right?
Right.
What does that look like today? You're going to talk about testing as well today,
Yes,
right?
I'm going to be talking about testing, but not on the AI space. Right?
Okay.
More on the more traditional testing.
Right.
I guess the realization came from coming at conferences like this, community meetups,
right,
chatting with folks, and then realizing that they have test suites that take 15 minutes or something, right? So they don't run it. I joined the Spring team from Pivotal, where we did test-driven development. So you run all the tests all the time.
Right.
Like every code change, run the test. Every code, you can't wait 15 minutes between every code change, right? That doesn't work. And so that kind of irritates me a little bit, right?
It needs cycle time.
Yeah,
it has to be low and fast.
And I think one of the problems is when you go to your favorite place on the internet.
That Spring.io.
Yes,
That's my second favorite place. First favorite place is production.
My bad.
But yeah, thank you.
And then when you go there, you generate the project, you get one test, right?
Right.
It does nothing.
It just loads the app, which is already kind of interesting. You validate that you've got a connection to a data source. And
right. It has feedback in it. And it's annotated with this @SpringBoot_test annotation that does a bunch of stuff for you. And it's great. You can iterate on it super fast, works really great.
Right.
But then as you add more tests and you start reusing this without considering what are the implications, this is how your test suite can grow, a little bit unwieldy.
Yeah.
And so in this kind of an intro, so I'm going to be doing a 2-hour session. I'm going to be discussing this and saying like,
2 hours.
Well, 2 hours.
By the end of it, it won't be an intro anymore. It'll be like,
guru. Well, I don't know about that, but and then so we'll see like, hey, what are the trade-offs you're implicitly making when doing that? What are the great tools that we bring? Because we say testing with Spring is usually start at Spring.io, and you get the like Spring Boot starter test.
Right.
What's in there?
Yeah.
What can you do? What are the cool opinions that Spring Boot has for you for testing? What are the create extensible tools that the Spring framework offers to have, amazing composable integration tests?
Right. All right. So are you going to talk about test slices and these kinds of things as well?
And then trying to, so as you said, we have a little bit more time, so I can talk about the trade-offs, right? Like doing slices everywhere is not great. I was at a conference, and some folks told me they were at their company that were doing like thousands of test slices.
Right.
And so the slices are much faster to start, right, than the full suite, but it still take 50 milliseconds to boot or something like that.
Yeah.
And when you have like 1,000 different slices, then you now have 50 seconds of doing that, right? So there's ideas of how to architecture stuff that is here, right?
Okay, that stuff I think is really, really cool. Like the testing stuff is more important than ever because again, we're building increasingly distributed systems with more moving parts.
Right.
Having the ability to isolate and decide about the invariants in your test, and then decide what should be the thing under test, and to isolate that from your stack.
Right.
It's very, very important. Spring Boot has all these nice little natural ways to work.
Yes.
Are you going to show Modulith and how they flipped it 90 degrees?
No, I'm not going to show that. I think I should add it to the presentation, right? Because so Spring Boot has slice test, and the idea of slice is your application is layered, if you will, right? You have the web stack, then you have your service layer, maybe your data layer.
Yeah.
And so it allows you to take one of these layers and test that, which can be interesting if you're doing, I just want to do database tests without everything, but still relying on the OS configuration from Spring. But it's very, it doesn't give you like a full deep integration test that you care about, right? And the reason is that it's Spring Boot can only know about this, right? It doesn't know about your business logic.
Right.
And so it gives you technical slices. And Spring Modulith is doing the other way around. Yeah, so they want to give you feature slices or module slices that you test. And so with this, you get the full slice of your module, and then you can test it in isolation from other slices, meaning you don't have to mock the entire world, only the dependencies of the functional dependencies, the collaborators of that given module.
Super good.
Yes.
I mean, but the fact that it's the same approach.
Right.
Think about it in terms of this isolation mechanism in your test framework, which is
Yes.
super cool. It's super cool that Spring is like thought about this, because it's one thing to be able to build. So Spring Modular lets you build up through your component model
Right.
this modular graph of dependencies, right? And then the fact is, Spring Modular, just like Spring Boot, is very aware of your technical slices.
Right.
Spring Modular is very aware of your modularity, your feature
functional slices.
functional
Yeah.
and it too is in a uniquely good position to help you isolate and then test that. I love that.
Yeah.
Same approach. Say if you understand the one, you can easily understand the other.
And I like that they like Oliver Broadbum,
Yeah.
great work on this modulith, providing architectural insight and
guidance.
guidelines, right?
Keeps. I think it should be called Spring on the Rails. Really, it's, on your class path first, always, right? It is too good to. It'll help you. It'll help you build code that will go the test of time. It'll stand the test of time because it'll scale well. Look, as people are starting to usher out of the talks, I'm worried our internet here is going to become poorer and poorer. So let's wrap this up. Where, my friend, can they learn? Oh, first of all, are you on the internet?
Yes, I am on the internet.
And do you want to be found?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And where can people find you?
So if you know my name, it's probably going to be
Did
in
I
the
spell it
description.
okay? I missed a hyphen.
Well, it's fine. Without there's one of me, so you can find me.
Yeah.
You can find me on Blue
yeah.
Sky.
When your whole name has more characters than the UUID,
It's sometimes annoying for the forms. So anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Then you can find me on Blue Sky at garnier.wf.
Garnier.wf?
Yeah, WF. Well, I mean, I would have
Not
taken.
FR?
No, I would have taken Garnier.fr, but it was taken, or Garnier.com, right? Beauty products. And so WF is the islands of Wallis and Futuna in the Pacific. Right.
French Polynesia?
Yes, well, around there, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to Bora Bora,
Ooh,
I know.
Very nice.
And
very
Tahiti,
nice.
also French Polynesia. Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
So
Friends,
find us on the internet. That's the reason why we come to these conferences.
Yeah.
Why we do this is like we want to learn from you, right? Because of course, we bring content, we bring code, but like that code
mostly
doesn't.
you, yeah.
Well, I mean, he brings
I bring
the content.
ASCII art
He
jokes.
brings.
That's
Yeah,
it.
well, he's bringing the code to the masses. Otherwise, just us nerds in the basement,
come on.
doing the security thing.
Ah.
And so we come here so that you reach out to us and you tell us about your real world problems, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, only you have a 20 million line monolith that has specific issues, right?
We need to hear from you.
Yes.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Especially if you have a 20 million line monolith. I definitely want to have a conversation with you. All right. Bye.